Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer has announced his retirement, and the ghost of Joey Depends has announced that he plans to stick by his promise of nominating a black woman to replace his position. Now, at first thought, any rational person would say, yeah, this is probably a good thing. There's no black woman on the Supreme Court. What a great piece of progress. This seems good. It seems normal. It seems like this is overdue, right? Joey Nazca Lines and his Depends had said things like, it's about time that they have representation. Now, what people are failing to recognize is that picking a person based on their race or gender, as opposed to their capacity to fulfill the job or them being the best candidate available, is sexist and racist. Any job and picking any person for any position should be based on their qualifications. If they are the most qualified person to fulfill that job, not based on their gender or the color of their skin. By promising to pick a black woman, essentially what he's saying is that if a more qualified white man or white woman also is in the runner for this position, that they will be overlooked and not picked because of their race or gender. That is racism. That is sexism. People need to understand this. Now, if this commentary bothers you because of what I look like, try to remember that you need to not judge what I'm saying based on my appearance, my skin color, or perceived gender, but the contents of what I am saying. The most qualified person is the person that should be picked for the position. The most qualified. By promising to pick a woman or promising to pick a woman of color before we've even assembled the list of who is the best candidate for this job, and they've been interviewed, they've been reviewed, they've been questioned, and all of the rest, you're essentially saying that it doesn't matter, others need not apply. Because what people fail to understand is that seeing the world and seeing human beings through the prism of race or gender creates a bias. And as you're trying to create this theoretical equal society, you're trying to make up for this equity, you're overlooking the bias that you're creating in yourself. You're being racist by thinking that way. You're being sexist by thinking this way. I understand that this may seem right in theory and in practice, but by saying that they don't have representation, what you're essentially saying is that all the other Supreme Court justices are not capable of understanding the life or what it's like if they were to have that skin color or if they were to have that gender. Being a Supreme Court justice means upholding the rule of law. It means upholding the Constitution and reading it for the letter of the law. There's nothing in the law that should change based on your gender or the gender of the person that you're making the laws about or perceived who it's for. It same goes for your skin color. Whom is the justice should have absolutely no weight on what it is. Just because your skin or your gender is a certain way, it doesn't mean that you would rule any differently than the law perceives. And you don't have to be a gender or be a skin color in order to think differently. That's because they're following the rule of law, not their own life experience and biases. Now, even though I understand that you could suggest that the lived experience of a justice or of a judge will be taken into consideration when they make their rulings, and that may be the justification for why you think this is right. I understand that. But what you're also saying is that should supersede the qualifications, the person most equipped for the job, and they should be ruled out because they don't have the right characteristics that are out of their control, that they were born with or without. By seeing the world through the prism of race and gender and thus making decisions that you believe will supposedly equal the playing field or gain back this equity, this whole kind of reverse racism idea is completely backwards to how the world should be looked at. You can't equal out something that may seem to be wrong by just going the complete other direction to try to balance it. That is not a solution. Reverse racism is not a solution to supposed racism. This idea of forcing positions based on these characteristics is completely backwards and antithetical to how the world should be viewed and how we should move forward. It's not going to balance things out by taking the lower qualified person just because of those reasons. Now, if a black woman or if a woman of color was the most qualified for this position, all day long, because that follows along the premise, which is the most qualified person for any position, regardless of skin color or gender, should be the person that gets the job. And maybe, a person that's willing to follow the Constitution. That would also be pretty cool. Yet for some reason, this concept is so difficult for people to follow and understand, because instead of looking at the contents of what I'm saying, they'll look at me and they'll make judgments based on that opinion. Like, oh, it's only because of X. It's only because it's a man. It's only because he's white. You are being the exact same person that you're pretending to fight against. These very dicey and complicated situations are typically avoided by most people because they require a lot of thought, a lot of real critical understanding of what's actually going on. It seems so obvious and normal to say, well, there's not a black woman on the Supreme Court. There should be one. There's lots of black women in the United States. That is a normal and rational position to take if you don't consider all of the other factors, if you don't consider what it means, if you don't look into it with depth. Right? It takes effort and thought and critical thinking skills to see these things for what they are. And it's more difficult for a person like me that looks like me to say something like that because of it. And the environment shouldn't be that way, because rational thought and understanding this stuff should be commonplace to everyone. And naturally, people will co-opt this situation and co-opt this time to virtue signal, to say, hey, I'm an ally, I'm on your side, I think that it should be a woman, it should be a woman of color. Yeah, if it's the most qualified person for the job, I'm all for it too, because I'm for qualified people. We don't look at the world through the prism of race. We don't look at the world through the prism of gender. We look at qualifications, we look at policies, we look at people that are willing to follow the letter of the law and the Constitution, because that's what the world needs, not people who only see this and only see this. But nope, it'll just create even more divide, because it'll become yet another polarizing issue that's not about the qualifications or the person or the characteristics necessary for a person to uphold and hold one of the highest legal positions in this land. It'll be instead about things that are out of people's control that should have absolutely no weight in the choosing of this position.